bringing themselves back, that Roshan was the utmost importance. Like, as soon as they realize they can't get the Roshan and Empire are going to get it, and not only that, but at the start of the fight, they lose their core. It's too much to deal with. I think this game had a lot to do with the fact that in the very beginning, like, sure, they were doing all right in their laning phase, but mid was constantly losing. Single time Hot6 took an unfavorable engagement, Empire can just take so much because of Track and Disruptor. That combination is just too good.
Indeed it is, and what a performance from them. It's the resolution, Lestra. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Hot6 banning that out in the first phase, or grabbing it for themselves, because that was incredibly destructive. Game 1 going to Empire, Game 2 going to be right round the corner, so don't go anywhere. And for the time being, we're going to head you over to our experts to hear what they have to say about the series so far.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And yeah, I mean, as the commentators covered, Lesh probably a decent ban. That's
who would have thought?
Yeah, I mean, just a tip, you know, just for all of you guys out there too. Not a bad idea. But even after that, I mean, we have had teams deal with that Lesh well. I mean, of course, it also depends on who's playing the Lesh. But this time, that just wasn't the case. Also, Empire looking pretty happy. Of course, they still have a chance to force that tiebreaker against VP. What did you guys think about this match, Winter?
Well, I think a lot of it comes from the Lesh being overfarmed, and when Lesh becomes overfarmed, there's nothing much that you can deal with it. And he had even built U so he can actually dodge the Omni Slash. So Juggernaut can't really go in and just Omni Slash and try to take down the Lesh itself. Like, overall, I think I've said this like a few times as well. Like, I feel like sometimes their offlane player, he only plays 2 heroes on MVP. He plays either Undying or he plays Clockwork. And he generally gets caught like a lot, and he gives away a lot of kills towards the enemy team. Like, sometimes he feels like he's trying to do too much to save his team when it's unnecessary. I think there was a couple of few where the Juggernaut was already dead, but he was still trying to go in and save his teammate. Like, probably trying to do too much in that sense. And giving away a lot of... It was also track kills he's been giving away.
So. Oh, that's true, yeah. Yeah, so something to consider. We'll be taking a look at a couple of highlights here. The first one of the times that Empire goes ahead and wipes Hot6.
It seemed like MVP took fights that they really should not have, like fighting into this Wraith King while he still had Resurrection, committing so much, and then he's able to easily follow up and be that janitor and just kind of clean house. And Frev they get the track gold too.
Yeah, sorry about that. But Frev with a misplay here, he starts TPing out before spinning. I talked about it in the draft, you could just spin TP, but he must have mistimed it or misclicked or whatnot. And it ends up being expensive because they actually want to abandon this fight, and then their Juggernaut is there, and I think they just decide, okay, we try to fight, and it just ends up costing them twice as much.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this is towards the later part of the game, and the Lesh is already quite far ahead. But overall, I mean, do you think that was the biggest problem, just the Lesh and then not being able to shut it down early and throughout? Or were there other things that Hot6 could have looked to do? I mean, if they have to avoid this fight, I mean, when do they fight, right? If you have to avoid every fight that starts like this, which could be pretty common.
You definitely don't want to fight when you have your Juggernaut cornered by a Wraith King, so he's your only target for Omni Slash. Like, even if he doesn't, if he gets everything off correctly in that fight with Jug, they're still going to get crushed, because they can't afford having Omni Slash just wasted on that. It was what Winter talked about. It's the reason Wraith King is a good counterpick to Jug, just keep him safe. So, I don't know, I think realistically at this point the game is almost getting out of control already, so maybe it didn't matter. But just in the early game rotations and the early game fights, Empire seem to trade pretty well, and they have the Bounty Hunter. So it can only really go one way, unless the Jugger gets very, very farmed. But the build he went for, the Drums Shadowblade, is not a farming build. You don't farm fast with it. There's no Mask of Madness in there. There's no Yasha. There is no potential Battle Fury, which is pretty unusual these days, but that would be another farming build. So he just can't keep up with the rate at which a Lesh can farm with his just core build.
Do you think he needs a BKB as well to fight what Empire had?
Yeah, probably. So he can counter the static.
I mean, there's too many things that he needs, and he spends a lot of his gold into stuff that is like, you might not get your reward. Like, you get Shadowblade, but you might not get kills. It's a risk thing. So there's too much he had to go for, like BKB and the damage item, and even like what Sin mentioned, like he needs items that speeds up his farming as well. So there's too much that he needs to do in this game.
Right, just a lot relying on that Juggernaut too. When we talked about earlier, we were like, well, there's no real hard counter for the Lesh, and maybe the Juggernaut could try to fill that role because you can try to get through and you can deal with it. And then the Wraith King came out, so lots of back and forth there. We have another highlight. Again, Empire just playing really well, winning another fight. And overall, let's look at the other side now. Empire, of course, you got to give credit to them aside from just simply being able to pick Lesh, right? How did they look compared to the past 3 days?
It's difficult to say going against MVP Hot 6, right? They are the bottom team in the group. How much does this really show about their strength? I also just think, compared to games we've seen from MVP Hot 6, like their good games, this was not really one of their good games in terms of execution and communication. So it's hard to read too much into it. The important thing for them right now is that they obviously have got the first out of 2 wins.
Right.
And I would rather reserve that judgment for, should they win this after the outcome of the series they would then have against VP.
That would be a really telling moment. Have they really picked themselves up? Have they really improved or not? Dakota, what are your thoughts? I mean, Empire, of course, feeling really good after game 1.
Could not have given him much more, really. Giving him the Lesh, Silent. He's very comfortable playing Wraith King. We all know what Yoku could do on the Earthshaker. And as you said, they were able to kind of lead off with an early snowball. They get the track gold, and it just didn't look like there was much to stop Empire. I mean, Jug, if he's equipping items, he's hoping to get pickoffs, but they're kind of stuck and corralled back in their base playing a defensive position. You don't have the defensive items, you're going to get caught out, and many times they did. That track, sight, plus glimpse back, there was just no chance of retreat.
All right, so we've already cleared about Lesh. Probably going to want to ban it from the side of Hot 6, unless, of course, if they are for first pick, you can try to get it, of course. On the other side, do you think there's anything specific that Hot 6 is looking for, whether it's a certain hero to ban or pick, or a certain style they're like, all right, this is what also really knocked us off our balance against Empire in game 1?
I think they would really like to play their Lina, but I don't know if they're getting it. Was that first phase banned by Empire this time, or was it actually in the pool?
I do not recall.
I feel like
actually.
it was a second phase ban.
Oh,
Oh, actually, no. It wouldn't have been, because the second phase was Anti-Mage and then the Husker.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think it was first phase,
It
second
must
banned
have
by
been,
Empire. I'm
it
pretty
must
sure.
have been the first, because I do believe it was banned.
They could look for that. They could look for the Naga, but realistically, I think Empire might just ban the same. Although, if the pick order is swapped, then maybe Empire feels like they have to ban Lesh, and then you would get either Naga or Lina.
That's true.
They did have the Quap this time, which I think is, of course, also a great pick in general, and it has worked out pretty well for Hot 6 in some of their games. But
They put a lot of priority into Bounty Hunter as well for Jarix, so they could also first pick up that.
Winter, what about you?
I think the picks is in general not the biggest issue like Hot 6 have. Like giving up the Lash is one thing, but overall they're losing a lot of their games is because they are not executing and not playing as well as they could have, and making a lot of mistakes in general, like individual mistakes here and there. So I feel maybe just adjusting towards not giving Lash away, and the rest is more focused on their general play as a team and as an individual. Everyone has to do their job and get their lanes sorted out well. I mean, that's the most. That's the main thing I feel about Hot 6.
Okay, I mean, yeah, of course, also it's just one game left for both teams. You can't think too much into it. At this point, you just got to play your heart out, see where that goes. Again, for Hot 6, it doesn't change anything on paper, but at the same time, you want to leave a kind of lasting mark for other teams to look at and say, you don't want everyone to kind of scoff at you and be like, oh, they were bottom of Group B, and that's where they belonged because we saw those last games and they never really picked themselves up. Hot 6 wants to stand back up, but on the side of Empire, definitely much more on the line. They win this. They don't secure a spot in the upper bracket, but they have a chance to force VP, and I'm sure VP is sitting somewhere anxiously right now watching this match, wondering how their fate will be decided by Team Empire and MVP Hot 6. We do have that other game going on, CDEC versus eHome. Do we have an update on that by any chance?
Score is currently 15-6.
Okay.
For CDEC.
For
Yeah,
CDEC.
for CDEC.
Okay, so sounds like CDEC is having
CDEC
somewhat of a dominating control.
definitely ahead on score, but looking at the net worths, it's not a lead that corresponds really to the kill lead. So
Okay.
I think I wouldn't count eHome out of it just yet. They also have both Naga and, well, they have the Naga, first off, sure to go late. But in addition to that, they also have Storm and Gyro. So actually with a pretty good set of cores here for them. So I could definitely see them taking it should go late. But the Naga is lowest net worth. It is position 5. So.
Okay. All right. Well, for those, if you guys are kind of interested in how eHome does, can they make it all the way to the top? They do need to win this one 2-0 also to go to first seed in Group B. You can head over to Stream 3 for that one. For us here, we are waiting on the second game between Empire and MVP Hot 6. And they are just about to go into it. Does this happen often? I mean, obviously, of course, it is thanks to kind of or a consequence rather, or result is the best word. Let me choose my words correctly. A result of the format that we have, that it's full round robin. We have the point system in a best of 2. That does allow for teams to always have to fight for something. But to the very end, I mean, we still have 2 teams that don't know whether they're going to be upper or lower bracket, let alone seeding within that. It's not too common, and even in this kind of format.
Are eHome not secured?
Well, eHome is secured, but
they're
for
fighting
them,
for
it's like,
placement.
do we get to pick our opponent or not? Like, that's a pretty big deal, too.
It's pretty unusual, I would say. There's always a lot of important games on the last day, but for the final 2 to each be very important. I believe previous years there's been like maybe one of the games that's been important, and the other one's just been like, just more or less just practice for the teams where nothing really was on the line.
But we do have a pretty unique case here where, and it also speaks to, again, I mean, the groups not being maybe too much far apart in terms of skill disparity. Overall, we were talking about earlier in the week, just the caliber of TI5 and how things definitely seem a lot closer, regardless of how it compares to the previous TIs in overall skill level. I mean, that's hard to tell because the game changes, the players change. But here we are, down to the very last game, and then potentially going to a tiebreaker between Empire and VP. We are in the draft, and things going down pretty quickly. Hot 6 does get to secure that gyro, while Empire did indeed ban out the Lesh. Undying also banned out by Empire, and quite a few other things open. I mean, Quap is still open. Of course, Tusk and Dazzle.
Bounty Hunter, if they want to get that
Bounty Hunter
for,
is still
for
open,
Jarix. Yeah.
Yeah. Empire, I mean, do you think they'll go for the Bounty Hunter again? I mean, that has served them well.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I think, excuse me, I think they might